So, speaking of past lives, have you lived a past life in Lemuria? So, Lemuria, also known as Mu, is believed to be a paradise where heaven truly existed on Earth. It was probably the only fifth dimensional reality we ever had on this planet. And the Lemurians were a peaceful, spiritually advanced race. There's been other spiritual races on the planet, but none have ever excelled as much as the Lemurians because they were one of the races that truly lived in harmony with nature and also all living beings. And we're going to find out more about what their culture was like in the coming slides. So this is a civilization that really walked their talk. They saw every creature from the smallest mosquito to the radiant sun as equally sacred. So let's explore the mysteries of Lemuria together. So a lot of us are wondering, there's certain civilizations that have always been in the forefront of our memories, but we don't know what happened to them. Atlantis is a great example. Everybody, I think, understands that Atlantis may have existed, and Lemuria was also one of those civilizations that somehow inexplicably disappeared. And we're going to explore why it disappeared, what happened to Lemuria in this presentation today. So many believe that Lemuria once thrived where the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Oceans are now. So today, places like Hawaii, which I just mentioned about, Easter Island, Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, and even some parts of Southeast Asia are thought to still hold the ancient Lemurian frequency. And later in this slideshow, we're going to explore some of these locations and what their connection is with Lemuria. So it is thought that Kauai, which I've been to Kauai, it's an amazing island. Who here has been to Kauai? Wow, a lot of you. I think we have some Lemurian souls in here. Wow. So Kauai is the oldest Hawaiian island, and it was considered to be the Lemurian capital, which blew my mind because the frequencies there are just, they're just otherworldly, honestly. It still is like that. Like when I was stationed in Oahu, it was kind of commercialized. It's kind of like, I was stationed at Pearl Harbor, and it's like, ultra commercialized, a lot of military, very crowded. But then when you go to places like the Big Island, Maui, Kauai, that's where you feel the real Lemurian frequency. So when I visit places like this, especially the crystal clear waters, I can really feel the energy of Lemuria, like stepping into an ancient memory. So I actually believe, and I've done a lot of Akashic readings. I've probably done thousands throughout the last 14 years or so. And pretty much what I see over and over again with my Akashic readings is we either have two waves of star seeds that some of them will have their first Earth incarnations in Lemuria. Some of them will have their first incarnations in Atlantis. A very few of them will have incarnations in both. So I do believe the first wave of volunteers or the star seeds came to Earth through Lemuria. So it was the first, I would say, organized civilization on the planet. And we'll talk about some timelines in the coming slides. So it's much older than people think it is. And my own soul memories of this location are filled with crystalline waters, lush landscapes, and beautiful, vibrant flowers. Not much unlike Hawaii today. It's a true paradise where nature was alive in a way that we can hardly imagine today. Let's get into some of the history, and their history goes way back, way back. So Lemuria was one of Earth's earliest spiritually advanced civilizations. It dated back actually to 70,000 BC. So this just shows us, and some of these dates I just downloaded, some of it came from research, but so it's even older than the Sphinx in Egypt, which kind of makes sense because the Egyptian civilization came later. So I think Egypt started probably right after the fall of Atlantis. I actually believe that some of the Atlantean survivors were some of the founders of the Egyptian civilization, but that's a whole other presentation. So 70,000 BC. So what this shows us is that there's been extraterrestrial influence on our planet for far longer than any of us have ever really imagined, particularly, I would say, mainstream history and mainstream archaeology. So under the guidance of the extraterrestrial founder races, which we're going to talk about more, and the Lemurian elders, Lemurian culture and society actually laid the foundation for many later civilizations, including Atlantis and ancient Egypt. So their culture was centered on deep spiritual connection, cosmic harmony, and energy mastery. Let's get into some dates. So I wanted to lay out the key moments in Lemurian history because it does give us an idea of how old this civilization was before its fall. And it gives us kind of a good timeline of what happened to this civilization. So, but it did exist for a very long time. I would say it's probably lasted even longer than Atlantis. And Atlantis also lasted for thousands of years. So it is thought in 933 BC, extraterrestrial colonists from Arcturus and Andromeda founded Lemuria in the Pacific Rim as a brand new civilization on Earth. So it has started quite a while ago. My understanding with extraterrestrial colonization is that extraterrestrials have been colonizing Earth for probably at least 4 million years. 4 million years. The very first colonists were the Syrians from Sirius A and B. We hear many accounts from the Dogon people regarding their interactions with Sirius B creatures or beings. And we also had some colonization from the Andromedans. The Andromedans were a little different. Syrians were always like, okay, let's tinker around with human genetics. Andromedans, on the other hand, they were more about, oh, let's just study the fauna and the flora here, so they were more scientists, so they're like, we don't want to mess with the people, we just look at the environment, which a lot of my Andromedan starseeds are still like that. They're like, I don't want to deal with people, I just want to work with the environment. Yeah, so in 50,000 BC, Lemuria emerged as a spiritually enlightened civilization. So this was when they were really stepping into their heyday. In 48,000 to 45,000 BC, there started becoming major advancements in energy technology and healing. Now, their technology was not the same as Atlantean technology. So Atlantean technology was very material, very physical. Lemurian technology was very energetic. And we're going to get more into detail about their civilization, but it was more based on intention and frequency than it was on actual physical machinery, which actually led to their downfall, which we'll get into. In 40,000 BC, Lemurians began interstellar exchanges with other beings. So back in the day, it was quite common for these civilizations to have extraterrestrial visitors. They were visiting all the time. I mean, it was not a big deal. It was like seeing the relatives from the East Coast. It was no big deal, right? And I do believe as a civilization, we're going to get back to that. We're going to get back to the times when like we had in the very olden days, where the extraterrestrials are going to come visit us, and it's going to be like seeing family again. Some people think it might happen next year. Let's hold on to that intention. So they began interacting, and we're going to talk about some of these races. Obviously, the Arcturians and Andromedans, but there was also other races of extraterrestrials that have a big influence on Lemuria. So in 38,000 BC, they started having some internal conflicts, and there are some external pressures, I think mostly environmentally related or weather related, that started leading to the civilization's decline. So their decline occurred even before the war with Atlantis. I think a lot of us have heard about, oh yes, they went to war with Atlantis and they lost the war. They were starting to become a decline even before that. So in 36,000 BC, the Lemurian elders decided, let's start safeguarding our knowledge, because we need to preserve this for future human civilizations. So they started encoding a lot of the history and their technological information in what we call Lemurian seed crystals, which we're also going to talk about in a moment. And they started taking this knowledge to different parts of the Pacific Rim. In 31,017 BC, this was when the major war with Atlantis resulted in the fall and complete destruction of Lemuria. And some of us might have some memories of that. My memories of that was so painful, I couldn't even access it in my own records for a long time. And I finally had a past life, actually it was a QHHT session where she was a very gifted QHHT practitioner, and she helped me access that memory. Sometimes it's good to, even if things are painful and sad, it's good to integrate that. Okay. Okay, we're going to start talking about how their society functioned. So this was a highly advanced civilization. I would say pretty much equal to what we probably had with extraterrestrial civilizations. There has never been a civilization quite like Lemuria on this planet, and that's why I keep saying we need to bring back Lemuria. We need to have a new Lemuria, which is part of why we're here in California. So Lemurian society was built on a communal and egalitarian foundation, where wisdom and consensus took precedence over strict hierarchy. So in other words, they didn't have tiers or classes of people. Everybody was equal. And I think that's something that we need to work towards again. So they didn't have like a ruling elite. Not even the elders that made the decisions considered themselves more elite than everyone else. So speaking of the elders, they actually guided the civilization. So they were mostly channels for deep galactic knowledge. So their role was to ensure that the decisions that they made aligned with the natural laws of harmony and balance. So they were trying to keep society in tune with the greater flow existence. So this is something I really love about the Lemurian culture. So one of their defining aspects was their approach to gender roles. So they did have gender roles, but it was very equality-based compared to, say, Atlantean or even Egyptian gender roles. And what I loved about their gender roles is that they stayed true to the feminine energy and the masculine energy. So they weren't trying to force women to be like men or men like women, which we see sometimes a lot of that today. So this played a real key part in their societal and spiritual development. So women were deeply connected to nature, and they were laying the groundwork for early ideas of morality, memory, and community. Their focus was on spiritual growth and understanding the nuances of good and evil. Men, on the other hand, concentrated on mastering the external world. So they were developing skills to manipulate natural forces and embodying strong willpower. So instead of competing with each other, these two paths complemented each other. So they created this civilization that seamlessly balanced the physical and the spiritual realms. So yeah, this is just amazing for that time period, especially. Now, a lot of people ask, what do the Lemurians look like? And I have my own soul memories, so this is based on my soul memories of what I think they might have looked like. And obviously they were advanced humans, so they were probably taller and better looking than humans today. And it doesn't really fit too much like what we think Hawaiians would look like today, or the Maori people from New Zealand, but so they had obviously more of an extraterrestrial influence in their genetics. So the Lemurian people were thought to be tall and graceful. So a lot of us that may have had soul memories would describe the Lemurians as being quite tall. So like I said, they don't look like the Polynesian people today. So it's thought that their height was 7 to 10 feet, which reflected their advanced and spiritually evolved nature. So very much like extraterrestrials. And my own soul memory was I was a female in Lemuria, and I remember being very tall. I miss being tall. I'm very short today, so I really miss that, darn it. It had beautiful golden skin. It's like, oh man, it's like I'm a white girl now, so like, darn it. Want to go back to that Lemuria body. So Lemurians were considered to be slender and ethereal. So they had very slender, graceful bodies, like this beautiful lady here, that exude a sense of lightness and ethereality. They had beautiful, radiant skin. Wow, I love that, yeah. So they had kind of a glowing quality. And I don't know if any of you have had contact with extraterrestrial beings such as Pleiadians or Andromedans, but they have this glowing quality to their skin. It's so beautiful. And they had kind of a subtle luminescence. So the color of their skin actually varies. So some will say, well, they were kind of golden or light brown. And some will say they might have even had bluish or pinkish skin. So maybe it just depends on where they lived, or I don't know, or what genetic influences they had. They also had very distinct facial features. So Lemurians are often portrayed with high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, and elongated faces, which gave them this serene and otherworldly appearance. So very much Andromedan. I would say their features sound very Andromedan to me. They also had the beautiful, large, expressive eyes. So their eyes are commonly described as being larger than average, often with vibrant, deep colors that convey wisdom and compassion.